Welcome back to Tongue of the Serpent. Last time, Mercy found Lenore. Lenore is alive, protected by the Sisters of the Purple Veil, and old enough to know that being wanted and being safe aren't always the
sad
same
because of me?
thing. Mercy took her daughter's hand, but she has not yet regained the years stolen from them. Across the city, Lucien brought Sabine home from the Devereaux crypt. Her body had been recovered at last, lifted out of the family silence that hid her among the dead. And in the other world, Renard felt something shift when Sabine's body was moved. Tonight, Mercy must face the first test of finding her daughter, leaving her safely for the night. Love wants to gather, fear wants to run, but a child who has survived this much needs patience before possession. This is episode 29. In between lie the doors. Navigation. The orphanage had settled into its evening shape by the time Mercy understood she was going to have to leave. It was a softer thing at night than it had been when they first arrived. The long halls, which in daylight had seemed spare and practical, had taken on the hush of a place that knew how to keep children sleeping. Lamps burned low in their glass chimneys. The walls held the last warmth of the day. Somewhere further down the corridor, water ran into a basin and then stopped. A door clicked shut. A child laughed in her sleep and turned over. Lenore stood near the threshold of the small room the sisters had given her, one hand still caught in the fabric of her own sleeve, as though she had forgotten it was there. She looked even younger up close than grief had allowed Mercy to imagine. At 10, her face still carried baby roundedness at the edges, though the eyes were older in the careful way of children who had learned to measure the moods of grown people before speaking. Mercy had imagined this moment too many times over the years. In none of them had she been required to walk away from it. Sister Belladonna stood near the washstand with her hands folded. Sister Perpetua remained just outside the door, giving the courtesy of distance, while still making herself available if the floor gave way under anyone's feet. Evelyn had drifted to the window, where she pretended to be occupied with the curtain tie back, so Mercy could have what privacy such a moment allowed. Lenore looked at Mercy with open caution.
Will you come back?
She asked. Mercy felt the question move through her like a candle flame finding old paper.
Yes,
She said at once, then gentled her own voice because the answer had come too fast, too sharp with fear.
yes. In the morning I shall come back in the morning.
Lenore studied her as if weighing the truth of her words. Sister Belladonna spoke then, her voice low and gentle.
It has been 3 years since she was brought to us, to the sisters. She has spent 3 years in this space here in New Orleans. 3 years of the same prayers, the same bowl for soup, the same creak in the stairs at dusk. Stability is a kind of medicine for a child.
Mercy turned toward her.
I know.
She did know. That was the torment of it. She knew, and she still wanted to gather Lenore into her arms, wrap her in her coat, carry her out into the night, and never let the world lay a finger on her again. Sister Belladonna met her eyes with the grave kindness of someone who had done the hard things in the name of love before.
Then you know why it must be morning, and why she'll need time to get to know you.
Mercy closed her mouth. Her hands began to shake. She clasped them together until the tremor hid itself in the pressure of her fingers. Lenore had not moved closer, though she had not moved away either.
Bellamy said you were out there,
Lenore said after a moment.
closing dangerous doors.
Mercy met her eyes.
I know.
Lenore nodded, then looked at her with the grave, measuring expression children sometimes wore when they were deciding whether a grown person could be trusted with the truth.
And you didn't come back.
She said. The words did not hold accusation, but they hurt. Still, Mercy knew that now was not the time for long explanations. Mercy bowed her head.
No.
Lenore's fingers tightened in the blanket.
Did you know about me?
Mercy looked up at that, and the answer struck so hard she almost felt it in her knees. No, she had not known. She had not known Lenore was alive, that she had drawn breath through all those vanished years. She had not known she had slept and woken and grown and needed things in a world that had gone on without Mercy's hands in it. If she had known, she would have crossed fire for her. She would have torn open every locked door between them. She would have followed that knowledge like a bell heard through floodwater. But none of that belonged in this room. Not tonight. None of that needed to be laid at the feet of a child who only wanted to know whether she had been forgotten.
No.
Mercy said quietly.
I didn't know where you were.
Lenore watched her with solemn attention, still and listening. Mercy said. Her voice nearly faltered, then steadied. That was the truth, trimmed into a shape a child could hold without long, painful explanations. Lenore turned that over for a long moment.
You would have?
Yes.
Mercy said. Lenore glanced around the walls of her small room.
I'm safe here.
I can see that.
Mercy said. Another pause.
Are you going now?
Lenore asked carefully, her large, expressive eyes gazing up into Mercy's. Mercy knelt, so they were nearer the same height, though she still kept a little space between them, enough not to crowd what had only just opened.
Yes.
Mercy said, wishing she could convey the intensity of her love for this small child without overwhelming her.
But not because I want to.
Lenore's face did not quite change, but something in it drew in slightly, with uncertainty and hurt. Mercy let out a slow breath.
Because tonight is already very full. You have your room, your bed, the sisters. I do not want the first night we find each other to feel like the ground has changed underneath your feet.
Lenore considered that, asking again.
Will you come?
Mercy did not look away.
Yes.
She said.
I will come back.
Tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow.
Mercy said.
I will be back in the morning.
Lenore studied her face, as though considering the truth in the words.
People promise too much.
A brief smile touched Sister Belladonna's mouth.
Bellamy was correct more often than was strictly convenient.
Mercy lowered her eyes for one moment. When she raised them again, she looked only at Lenore.
Only to keep.
She said.
I know where you are now. I am here now, and I will not vanish from you again if I can help it.
Lenore absorbed that in silence. Then, small and almost matter-of-fact, she asked.
Are you sad because of me?
Mercy made a sound that might have become a laugh somewhere gentler.
No.
She said.
Never because of you.
Then why?
Because sometimes finding something precious does not erase the fact that it was lost.
Then Lenore was quiet for a moment before asking in a voice almost too small to hear.
Did you want me?
Mercy shut her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her voice was very steady.
Lenore, there has never been a world in which I would not want you.
Mercy bowed her head. For a heartbeat, she could almost feel Bellamy in the room with them, practical and frightened and stubborn, holding a baby she had no business carrying and taking her anyway.
I do want to do too much,
Mercy admitted, speaking slowly to attempt to explain without it being overwhelming. She lifted her eyes to Lenore's.
I would like to stay. I would like to sit in the chair all night and make sure every shadow behaves itself. I would like to ask you a million questions and answer 1,000 more. I would like to be selfish because I've missed you for so long.
Lenore's sleeve loosened in her fingers.
But I think,
Mercy continued, each word chosen with visible care,
that if I love you properly, I come back in the morning, I let tomorrow be tomorrow. I do not tear your whole life open in one evening just because my heart is impatient.
Lenore looked at her for a long time then. Mercy could not read the child's silence. Finally, Lenore asked,
Will you have breakfast with me?
Mercy's breath caught.
Yes,
She said,
if they allow me, I will have breakfast with you.
They'll allow it.
Sister Perpetua said.
I thought perhaps porridge and permission slips had grown more severe in my absence.
Mercy murmured, and the sisters, merciful women that they were, allowed that poor scrap of humor to live. Lenore shifted her weight, then slowly, with the grave ceremony children sometimes bring to the simplest acts, she crossed the small space between them and placed her hand in Mercy's again. Mercy took it as though receiving a relic. Lenore's palm was warm, small, real.
You came.
Lenore said.
I did.
You came late.
Mercy closed her fingers very lightly around the child's hand.
I know.
Lenore considered this.
Morning is better than never.
Mercy almost broke on the spot.
Yes,
She whispered.
morning is better than ever.
Evelyn stepped closer then, soft-footed and steady. She rested one hand at Mercy's shoulder, not urging, simply anchoring.
You are leaving.
Evelyn said quietly, for Mercy alone.
You are not vanishing. There is a difference.
Mercy stared at Lenore's hand in hers. She let the truth in that settle within her like a stabilizing anchor, enough to hold onto until the next morning. She pressed a kiss to her own knuckles rather than to the child's skin, because even tenderness had to obey its limits tonight. Then she let go.
In the morning.
Mercy said.
In the morning.
Lenore echoed. Mercy rose. Every part of her body resisted it. Sister Belladonna moved to the bedside and drew the blankets back. Lenore climbed in with the solemnity of a girl performing an agreed-upon ritual. One eye still fixed on Mercy, as though testing whether the promise would hold if she blinked. At the door, Mercy stopped once more.
Thank you.
She said to the sisters, and though the words were simple, they carried years inside them.
For protecting her, for keeping her alive long enough for me to feel more slowly.
Sister Perpetua's face softened.
Come back in the morning, Sister Mercy.
Mercy inclined her head. Then she turned, and Evelyn went with her, and together they walked out into the corridor where the lamps burned low, and the house held its breath around sleeping children. They did not speak until the front doors had closed behind them, and the evening air touched Mercy's face. Only then did Mercy stop on the steps, grip the stone rail hard enough to whiten her knuckles, and shut her eyes.
I could have taken her.
She said. Evelyn stood beside her in the violet dark.
Yes.
I wanted to.
Yes.
Mercy opened her eyes.
I hated leaving.
I know.
Mercy looked back once toward the lit windows above, where the curtain had already gone still.
Was it cowardice?
Evelyn's answer came without hesitation.
No, it was the first merciful thing you have allowed yourself in years.
Mercy let out a long, frayed breath. Somewhere beyond the walls of the orphanage, the city kept moving, wheels on a distant stone, a dog barking at a world stubborn enough to continue.
In the morning.
Mercy said again, as if fixing the words into the air might keep Dawn from wandering off. Evelyn slipped her arm through hers and began guiding her down the steps.
In the morning,
she said, and this time Mercy went.
Payment rendered.
By the time Renard Blackwood understood the world had changed, it had already begun changing around him. The house that had held him for what felt like days and hours and a fever all at once had developed a flaw in its breathing. He felt it first in the floor beneath his boots. The tremor was subtle, a shiver under the boards, the kind of movement that would have meant nothing in an ordinary place. Here it was loud as a bell. The walls had spent too long pretending permanence. One loosened stitch, and the whole lie began to show. He stood very still in the narrow passage between the two half-rotted parlors, one hand on the knife at his belt, and the other braced against wallpaper that pulsed faintly under his palm, like skin dreaming of being flesh again. The house had been built out of concealment. He knew that now. Door behind door, room behind room, hallways that returned to themselves with changed proportions, staircases that led into air unless the house approved of you that day. It had fed on arrangement, on placement, on something hidden where it should never have been hidden. And now, somewhere far beyond the reach of its mold-black ribs, someone had moved the thing it had been organized around, pushing on the hard control Hecate had kept on her other-world creation. He felt, rather than saw, the shape of Sabine, with her control of windows and portals, even though she remained tethered so firmly to the crew. He did not know how he knew. The knowledge came as instinct comes to foxes and gamblers, clean and immediate. A weight had been lifted from the center of the labyrinth. The geometry had faltered. The current had shifted. Renard smiled for the first time since the place had swallowed him.
There you are.
He murmured to the dark, and the dark answered by changing temperature. He turned before she spoke, feeling the shape and density of her here in this crossroads otherworld. The widow stood at the far end of the corridor, as if she had always been there, and the world had only just earned the right to notice. She was translucent here, not solid, unable to manifest herself completely into such a foreign space.
You feel it?
She said. Renard leaned one shoulder against the wall, though his pulse had already quickened.
Hard to miss. Something has been removed.
Yes.
Sabine.
The widow inclined her head once.
Bargains are unraveling.
Relief flashed through him so cleanly it almost hurt. Lucian had found her then. The stability of the other worlds was shifting, because the dead girl was no longer where the wrong world wanted her. The widow took one measured step forward, her translucent form shimmering unsteadily. The boards beneath her feet made no sound.
You owe me a door,
she said. Renard let out a breath through his nose. Of course, why else would the widow be here? He thought of Marcus Badeau, pale and half lost, and shaking in his grip. He thought of the promise he had made in that other season of desperation, when survival itself had been a kind of currency, and he had paid with the future because the future was not yet bleeding.
I remember.
He said.
I do not require sentiment,
She replied.
only performance.
Something in him almost laughed in relief. She would have made an excellent banker. The corridor gave another small shudder. Far off, a door slammed and then kept slamming in diminishing echoes, as though the house had forgotten how many doors it owned. Renard straightened from the wall.
If I open it for you,
He said.
everything changes.
The widow did not answer, which was answer enough. He looked through her, down the ragged throat of the corridor, where shadows had started to move with less discipline than before. She had come because the structure could finally be crossed in the way she required. She wanted ingress or passage or claim. Whatever her purpose, it demanded a threshold, and his debt demanded he provide it. If he did, the opening would not belong to him, but that did not mean he could not use it. The house gave another tremor, stronger this time. Dust drifted from the ceiling in a soft gray veil. Somewhere upstairs, something laughed in a voice, too young and too long dead. Renard rolled his neck once and flexed his fingers.
Well,
He said.
I have certainly done worse work for less appealing employers.
The widow neither smiled nor objected.
Do it.
He moved then, quick and purposeful, following the altered drag in the air. The hall bent left where earlier it had bent right. Good. Let it lose its confidence. Let it forget itself in front of him. He passed a nursery full of cracked wooden horses, a narrow chapel with no altar, a room lined floor to ceiling with empty picture frames. At the end of the next passage stood a door that had not been there an hour ago. It was plain enough to be offensive. Old wood, iron latch, and a pale seam of light around the edges. Renard stopped before it. Behind him, the widow arrived with the unhurried patience of winter.
There.
Yes,
He said.
I can see it.
He placed his hand on the latch and felt the whole structure tense around the contract. The door was locked into more than wood. It held resistance from both sides, the mortal and whatever lay adjacent to it. Renard closed his eyes for one heartbeat and listened. He listened to the drag of the altered current, to the strain in the walls, to the wrong little silences of a house losing custody of its own rules. Sabine had used what influence she had in such spaces. The center of the house had shifted. The whole grotesque arrangement was fractionally off balance, which was all he needed. He drew in a breath and put his shoulder into the work, not physically at first, but inwardly. The old promise to the widow stirred through the instability of the crossroads house. He felt it tighten, felt the debt line spark alive from that earlier night with Marcus all the way to this one.
I open the promised door.
He said, voice low and steady. The latch burned cold against his palm.
For passage.
Said the widow from behind him, her form flickering.
For passage.
Renard agreed. The house groaned, and the seam of light around the frame widened by a hair. Renard smiled with all his teeth, careful not to yank the door open. Such places punished brute force. He coaxed it at first, then twisted hard, then drove the whole of his will through the narrowing point where bargain debt and broken geometry met. The latch gave with a sound like bone cracking in wet earth. The door flew inward. What lay beyond was not a room, It was movement. It was night stripped of landscape. It was wind with intention behind it. A black rushing in between cut through it all with threads of gray light, all of it pulling towards somewhere real. The widow solidified before the door, her astral self dissipating behind him. She moved quickly, without sparing him another glance. That, more than anything, told him how badly she had wanted it. Without dramatic speech or flourish, she passed him in a sweep of black cloth and graveyard air. For one instant, the current strengthened. Renard laughed, sharp and breathless with relief. The opening dragged at his coat, his hair, the very shape of him. Behind him, the corridor convulsed. Wallpaper split. One of the walls gave a wet sigh and collapsed inward. The house knew what had happened. The house hated it, and he loved it. He cast one quick glance back at the ruin, savoring his part in its destruction.
Be offended,
He said. Then he stepped through the open door and entered the current of movement. It hit him like cold air after drowning. Everything that followed happened too fast for sequence. There was wind, pressure. There was the sensation of every threshold he had ever crossed, brushing past him in reverse. Motel doors, church doors, dressing room curtains, train platforms, car doors at midnight, carnival gates, hospital stairwells, backstage fire exits, narrow apartment entries where love had waited and where it had ended. It was passage after passage after passage, all reduced to force. Renard did not fight it. He let it take him. The widow had needed a door opened. Renard needed out. The current cared nothing for motive, as long as the opening held long enough to choose a direction. He folded himself into that movement with the savage grace of someone who had spent half his life escaping one thing by using the mouth of another. The house vanished behind him. For one exquisite instant there was no wall, no whispering corridor, no hidden center binding him inside a bad piece of theology. There was only velocity and the certainty that he was leaving. Relief tore through him so hard it almost felt like grief. Then the dark broke, and Renard went with it. Thank you for listening to Tongue of the Serpent. Tonight, Mercy did the thing her heart could barely survive. She found Lenore, held her hand, promised to return, and then left her safely with the sisters until morning. She didn't want to, but love, when it is careful, does not tear open a child's whole life just to soothe an adult wound. Lenore asked if Mercy wanted her. Mercy answered with the only truth large enough for the moment. There has never been a world in which she would not want her. But wanting is not the same as keeping, and finding is not the same as restoring. In the other world, Renard felt the old arrangement loosen after Sabine's body was moved. The widow came to collect the door he owed her, and Renard opened it. The widow passed through. The house of thresholds convulsed, and Renard escaped back toward the living world. Next time, Mercy and Lucien returned to the crew, carrying 2 different kinds of recovery. Mercy has found a daughter she cannot yet bring home. Lucien has brought home a sister who still is not free. And in the nursery, the angel egg hears the name Agnes. Until then, keep your promises small enough to mean them. Let morning do what night cannot. And remember, some doors open because they are paid for, and some close because love has learned restraint.